Kajo, 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 kayo, kayo, kayo. Uyo me yo le uosan okami o. Uyo me ya, oh uyo me ya le uosan okami o. Uyo me ya, uyo me ya.
It's a great privilege we have this morning to be here. So what we are doing this morning is very, very important. This training is extremely important, and we are very grateful for our speaker. She's been here, in fact, she got here before me. Yes. I have the privilege of having with us from the University of Ibadan, Pharmaceutics Department. Am I correct, ma'am? Okay. Dr. Aki Ajani. She's our facilitator today. Yes, she'll be coming up, not now. Yes, please just thank you, ma'am. We also have Subject Faculty of Pharmacy, Dr. Adetuji Oladapo. Am I correct, sir? Oh. All right. Then we have also Mr. Oshinuga Babatunde. He's the Chief Technologist of the Department of Pharmaceutics, University of Ibadan. All right, please, let's put our hands together again as we call on stage our facilitator, Dr. Aki Ajani. Please. My presentation will be read, please.
Dr. Olufunke D. Aki Ajani, FPC Pharm, is an Associate Professor of Pharmaceutics at the Department of Pharmaceutics and Pharmaceutical Technology, University of Ibadan, Nigeria, where she is the current acting head. She is a Fellow of the West African Postgraduate College of Pharmacists. She obtained her first degree, B. Pharm, from the Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, Nigeria, and her MSc and PhD from the University of Ibadan, Nigeria. She started her academic career at the University of Lagos, Nigeria, being an academician, researcher for over 2 decades. Her research focus is on drug formulation, excipient development, and drug delivery. She has over 30 publications in reputable international scientific journals and a patent. Together with her team from the Department of Pharmaceutics and Pharmaceutical Technology at the University of Ibadan, she will be taking the Extemporaneous Preparations Masterclass at this year's summit. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Dr. Olufunke D. Aki Ajani, FPC Pharm.
Good morning, my distinguished senior colleagues and colleagues in the House. It actually is a privilege and a great honor for me to stand before you today to hold this master. Very important because it has always been part of our training, right from our undergraduate days. If we cast our mind back, we remember our dispensing classes, the various formulations or compoundings that we were involved with, and so we'll see that all through it has really been a part of us. But somehow we've allowed the tradition to die out, and that's what we're trying to resuscitate, because in a number of countries now, other than Nigeria, extemporaneous compounding has really become a crucial issue. Alright, so we're saying that extemporaneous preparation has always been a part of our training, and what we're just trying to do is to encourage you to embrace this part of our training that we have, so to say, forgotten. But then it's very much coming back alive in many parts of the world, and pharmacists, of course, being the experts as far as medications and handling of drugs is concerned, are the ones that have spearheading it. And so it's important too that in our country, Nigeria, we also help the populace, we help our own people to bridge the gap, where licensed medicines are not able to. Foundational rationale and principle of extemporaneous compounding. We are going to start out by talking about what exactly is extemporaneous compounding. And of course, like I said, it's something that we're all familiar with, so we're just reminding ourselves really what it's really all about. And it just has to do with the traditional and vital pharmacy technique of preparing, mixing, assembling, packaging, and labeling of customized drug products in response to a licensed practitioner's prescription. I'm sure this definition reminds us of what is on our practice license, isn't it? Where we are licensed to mix, prepare, package, and all that. And simply that's what extemporaneous compounding is really all about, but then we're bridging the gap. So this is the foundational rationale. Now, when exactly do we need to compound these preparations? Now we know that in the amongst our patients, we have certain subgroups or certain groups of patients that the normal licensed medications do not cater for. And as a result of that, it is important as pharmacists that we are able to take care of all our groups of patients. So when we talk about pediatric patients, we know we have the neonates and the infants whose metabolic system isn't well developed to the extent that they can make use of medications that are commercially available. And so it is important that as pharmacists we're able to step in there and do something for this group of patients. We also have the geriatrics that is also important that we're able to help, mainly because for some of them they can no longer handle well the solid dosage units. Then we also have a group of patients would normally react to excipients that are used in the formulation of some of the commercial products, and because of that there is a need for us to reformulate some of these medications so that we can remove or avoid the allergens that they are reacting to in those formulations. We also sometimes have drug shortages within the supply chain, and as pharmacists we should be able to bridge the gap even at those times. Then of course for certain patients who cannot swallow as a result of dysphagia, we should be able to also step in and help them in preparing these products. Then of course we have those who must take their medication through feeding tubes, and for this set of patients we must also step in with these kind of compounded products so that they can be fed their medications appropriately. So that is why we really need to go into extemporaneous preparations. It is also very important that we remind ourselves that unlike the mass-produced commercial medications that have been licensed, they already have documentations regarding their safety, their stability, and their quality. The same doesn't apply for extemporaneous preparations, because even from the name extemporaneous itself tells us that it is a spot-on, something that you need to do for that required patient or for that required situation. And so as a result of that, the product that you end up with, its quality, its safety, its potency, the responsibility of all that will eventually lie on the shoulders of the compounding pharmacist. And so we need to take this into cognizance. So what really is the reality? The reality today is that over 95% of prescriptions that go out actually are for medications that are licensed. However, it is important that we are able to bridge the gap where these licensed medications do not cover the subset of patients that need medications that are not available in the dosage form that they need it, or it's not available in the strength of which they need those medications. And so we must be able to help such patients, whether they're neonates or children below 6, or elderly patients, or those with other conditions we need to be able to step in. And just like we said at the beginning, the accountability for these products shifts from the industrial manufacturers to the compounding pharmacists. There is a clinical rule that must be observed whenever we are looking at extemporaneous preparations, and that is, you cannot just compound because you feel you ought to compound. You must ensure that compounding will only occur when there is no equivalent licensed item. That is the reason for compounding. And so we have what is called a therapeutic cascade. And that therapeutic cascade means that you're first of all asking yourself a question: are there commercially available products that will solve this problem? If the answer is yes, then that is what should be recommended. Are there alternatives within the same group of medication? If the answer again is yes, then that is what you go for. Are there other products that are exempt but not licensed, already prepared, in which you have documentation regarding their safety and things like that? Then that is the next step. Now, if the answer to all those questions I have listed is no, that is when you can go ahead and compound whatever preparations are required. Now, certain countries, Australia in particular, still goes further in their therapeutic cascade, and they say if those questions we have asked, if the answers are no, are there any products in America or in Canada that they can bring into their country to satisfy that situation or that disease condition? If the answer is yes, then they will still go ahead and bring in the product from that other nation. Now, having answered that question, they further ask themselves, is there a compounding pharmacy that exists, and the sole purpose of that pharmacy is compounding, that is preparation of extemporaneous products? If the answer to that is yes, then they would still say, go and purchase from a compounding pharmacy before you as an individual pharmacist can go ahead and compound. So that is the therapeutic cascade, and it is very important that it's followed so that you can protect yourself as a pharmacist. So when we want to talk about the principles, we're actually looking at the execution of compounding, and this spans three structural categories. The first one has to do with simple compounding, and when we talk about simple compounding, we are simply looking at compounding that has documentation or formularies or other official books that you can fall back on. That is, there is a formula that you can follow. There are certain verified stability criteria that you can fall back on. BUDs have already been determined, that's the beyond use date has already been determined, and so you can simply follow that. Simple example of that is reconstitution, all right? That is a simple compounding that can be readily done even in our community pharmacies. A patient cannot handle certain dosage form. Let's say a child less than 6 years old, all right? The medication they need is available only in tablets. You can go ahead and compound. How do you do that? We will be doing a little demonstration of that in a short while. Now, it is important to mention that even though tablets are scored, just halving them or taking them in 2 quarters does not give you the right dose. There are studies or research has been done to prove this. And it's so bad that when even scored tablets are cut along the scoring, it says that in 90% cases, you have more than 10% of that dose unaccounted for. And of course, if you are dealing with medication with narrow therapeutic windows, then it means that you're really running into some trouble. So you cannot afford to just half a tablet or just quarter a tablet, which is what we see the mothers doing regularly. So this is where we step in as community pharmacists. You know that this is the requirement for this child, then do something about it. Let me not run ahead. Then We have moderate compounding. This is also feasible within the community pharmacy. And here, what happens is that you do not have the documentation to tell you this is the exact formula. Neither do you have documentation to fall back on regarding the stability. But then, you are able to work on it based on your own professional knowledge regarding the pathway of degradation of the active principle and things like that. The complex compounding requires a little more. It's not enough to just have either the Farm D or the B Farm to go into complex compounding. There's a need for you to go for specialized training up to postgraduate level so that you're able to do some form of complex compounding. And here, the requirement is stiffer. It's stiffer for the storage space required for compounding and all that. We'll be talking a little more about that. Examples of this involves preparation of intravenous infusions, sterile preparations of ophthalmic drops for the eye, individualized chemotherapy, and of course, more recently, 3D printing that is required for personalized medicine. So, what are the requirements? The first requirement is infrastructure and storage. It is so important that you have a dedicated area for compounding. As a community pharmacist, you can't just do your compounding in the same area where you sell medication, where you have other items, household or cosmetic and toiletries, things like that. You must have a designated area for that. And even within that designated area, you still must have storage separate for compounding materials, for cleaning materials, and the like. And then, of course, the essential tools and equipment that you must have if you want to go into extemporaneous preparations are listed there. I'll just run through it. You need your mortar and pestle. You need an ointment slab or tile, beakers, measuring cylinders, pipettes or droppers, so that we all know the importance of accuracy of measurement. Electronic analytical balance, hot plate or magnetic stirrer, capsule filling machine, ointment mill or homogenizer if you're going to work with production of emulsions, and then of course packaging, very, very important, and then the excipients, APIs and bases that you will be needing. Alright, so that's ends model 1. Model 2 talks about the pharmaceutical quality assurance and stability of extemporaneous preparations. And you can see there a colleague testing out some of the things that is required in establishing quality and stability. So, like we all know, quality assurance primarily has to do with the metrics of purity, identity, composition, and strength. However, in resource-limited settings, a common failure or a common QA failure is the fact that the pharmacist relies primarily on physical testing or physical assessment of just checking the clarity of the final product, the color, and the odor. And that's why we said I've been emphasizing collaboration right from when we started, because you can actually do far more than just the visual inspection. If you collaborate with academia, my department for instance, we can help you out, to do some analytical checks, and that's where you have established records of your preparation. So you will be able to speak to it that we prepare this from past studies that we have done or past tests. We know that this are the quality of our material. So to solve this problem, pharmacists ideally should design quality into their products. And what this means is that you have designed a framework or a workflow using your standard operating procedure, so that whether it is you yourself as the pharmacist or the pharmacist technicians that work with you, they can follow systematically the framework that you have already set out. Now, two things helped us to do this. That's the master formulation record, which is a permanent technical master template, and the audit-ready compounding record. And this one is for every batch of preparation that you make. So, comprehensive quality systems demand a structural documentation and a strict procedural workflow before you start the preparation, during and after the compounding event. Okay, so the master formulation record is a mandatory blueprint. Okay, and what it does is that before you even start out at all, you have already answered certain questions. Some of those questions I will not go over again because we've talked about it at the beginning. Okay, the therapeutic cascade. You answer those questions and then you write out what exactly you intend to do in preparation of that product. Now, one of the documentations that are important for us in Nigeria will be to look at our essential medicine list, national drug formulary, but more recently I hear that the National Health Insurance Authority standard treatment guideline is actually something to really look into. I went online to see what the Pharmacists Council had to say regarding extemporaneous preparations. And interestingly, we actually don't have specific guidelines, but they're still the regulators. They have a few things listed out on their website, but it is not enough. We actually do need specific guidelines regarding extemporaneous preparations in Nigeria. Other countries are so detailed. I think I've mentioned the case of Australia earlier on. Ireland is another country that has well-established guidelines. Even Saudi Arabia, I went into their documentation and they are so specific, even regarding specific items. So it is really important that Nigeria to get to that point where we have established guidelines regarding extemporaneous preparations. So the compounding record, unlike the MFR, specifies the raw material batch numbers, the accurate weights that you have used or quantities measured, and then of course staff signature with the verification steps. What that means is that if you did certain calculations to arrive at the dose that the patient was going to use, someone else also has to verify, and as many as have verified need to sign that document. Of course, the final evaluation parameters that were carried out must also be stated in the compounding record. So both of them actually are used to protect not just the patient, but even you as the practitioner who is doing the compounding. Okay, then we have the material and components verification, different documentation, certificate of analysis, certificate of suitability. All these are very important documentations to verify the purity and the authenticity of the starting materials that you are working with, because these are what you really can fall back on when you are done with your preparation. You know, you cannot verify the final product going through all the safety analysis and all may be a little difficult, but when you are certified, the materials that you are starting with, it's easier to be able to establish purity of the material you have compounded. Now, the 4I principle simply talks about the fact that it's important that whoever it is that is doing the compounding also has someone else to check. That's simply what the 4I principle is talking about. Someone else has to check. Another pair of eyes has to look through all that has been done. So you can't be too confident that you have done everything so well, I carried out my calculations so well. Someone else has to come and look through measurements that you have taken, weights, calculations, and just to verify, to ascertain that all that has been said has actually been carried out. Then the finished product evaluation. Before any extemporaneous preparation can be sent out or dispensed, it's also important that the compounding pharmacist comes to verify. Now, you notice that I keep saying the compounding pharmacist has to verify. That's because in a number of these countries where we take material from. It is actually the pharmacist technician that does the actual work of compounding, and the compounding pharmacist supervises. The compounding summit that was held in Lagos, that was late last year, or was it October last year? Thank you. You know, we actually had one of the technicians coming from the United States, and she was the one who actually took us through all the compounding steps, you know, how they go about it. So it is important that we learn to embrace all the members of the healthcare team. Now, for non-sterile suspensions and solutions, this evaluation will include weight accuracy, uniform mixing, appropriate pH thresholds, and absence of visible crystallization. Now, you notice that all these tests that I have mentioned will actually require to have certain equipment that will allow you to do this. Collaboration comes in again. You don't necessarily have to have all the equipment. If you liaise with any of the research institutes or academic institutes, they can actually carry out these tests for you to ascertain the finished product that you have. Okay, so sterile compounding, I'm just going to run over this because this requires a little more. Except you have made up your mind that you actually want to go into compounding and you're not combining it with retail services or anything. This actually involves a lot. So this, like we said earlier, requires extra training, and then the quality assurance is drastically heightened. You need to work in a class 5. You need to work in a class 5, under class 5 barrier, or what was formerly known as the class 100 clean room. And that simply says that it's important that you work in a laminar flow. This is the laminar flow cabinet here. That's the laminar flow hood that pharmacist is working in. And usually that helps to control the way organisms come in and all that. You can also use the high efficiency particulate air filters. These ones are very good because they do not allow any organism that is larger than 0.3 micrometers to pass. So that means that you can almost say that you have eliminated all forms of contamination when you work within the HEPA filter. Okay, still talking about sterile compounding, the environmental control is very cogent when you talk about sterile compounding. The environment is key. Personnel qualification, also important. I've mentioned that in passing. In addition to this, from time to time, they also have to go for annual tests, including microbiological validation tests. Now, this is not talking about the environment, it's actually talking about the person. And what happens here is that the palms of the hands of the compounding pharmacist, are swabbed so that you can take a microbiological test to see what kind of organisms, are actually prevalent on the person compounding, and then you can actually test out for specifics. In all cases, you don't want any case of Escherichia coli being identified either within the compounding environment or on the person of the compounding pharmacist. And then, of course, it's so important to eliminate all forms of contamination. There was a study carried out by pharmacists in Ghana, and what they did was that they took extemporaneous preparations from the 4 major hospitals that they have in Accra. And they worked with the compounding pharmacists over a period of months, taking samples, from time to time of the extemporaneous preparations that they had, and they would go and check for purity, and they also did microbiological assay. And one of the periods when they did microbiological assay, the recommendation is that you don't have more than 100 colony-forming units of whatever microorganisms. And they discovered that they had between 20 to 40, and they allowed the pharmacists to know that this was what they had discovered in the course of their study. And the compounding pharmacists took it very serious. They shut down the pharmacy for a period and they sanitized the entire place. And after that period, they went back to compounding, invited the researchers back, who came and took more samples of the extemporaneous preparations. And this time, the reason why they shut it down was because they actually had presence of Escherichia coli in 2 of the plates that they tested out. So that was why they shut it down. And then after they had sanitized and everything, they came back again and took more samples of the extemporaneous preparations that they had. And this time they had less than 10 colony forming units and no Escherichia coli at all. And so that's just to show us that it is very important that we maintain a sterile environment. Okay, so stability considerations, physical as well as chemical instability is very important. Permit me to fly through because of time. Now, physical and chemical instability can come about as a result of the vehicle that we are using to compound. In some cases, what happens is if it goes by the physical pathway alone, you have dose non-uniformity, or you have altered bioavailability. But if it is in the chemical pathway, then it means that you are having interactions between the API and the excipient, and it's producing something else that may be harmful or that reduces the potency or the strength of the active drug. A common example is that of captopril, which undergoes oxidation and ends up with captopril disulfide, and of course the potency reduces sharply. And what is done here is that sodium ascorbate or ascorbic acid is added in the compounding, and that helps to prolong the shelf life while it's kept refrigerated. Then of course microbiological stability talks about the fact that you want the active drug to remain 90% potent even by the end of the compounding. Now the beyond use date assignment also is very, very important. There was a study done in Sudan, and in this particular study, even though they followed the USP formulary for their various compounding extemporaneous preparations, they decided to use their own BUDs, and of course they ended up having some cases of mortality, in fact about 2%, because they kept extending the BUDs beyond what the USP formulary had stated. And so there's a need for us to stick with whatever the BUDs are, and we do have stipulated BUDs that help. For non-preserved aqueous formulations, the maximum BUD window is 14 days, and it must be stored between 2 to 8 degrees. For preserved aqueous formulations, the maximum BUD is 35 days, and that can be stored in ambient or cold conditions depending on the nature of the formulation. Then of course for non-aqueous dosage forms, there's a maximum of 90 days under controlled room temperature. And then for solid dosage forms, capsules, powders and tablets, you have a maximum of 180 days. Now some of these numbers that I've been quoting for us will be found in the USP, chapter 795 for non-steriles and 797 for sterile products. Other materials that we can handle under compounded sterile products are hazardous material, radiopharmaceuticals, UCH I know has radiopharmaceuticals. And so for quality assurance in compounding, that is found in 1163. Okay, so I'll quickly hand over to my colleague at this point so that we can still run through.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah, most of what I'll be talking about are part of the things that my team lead has talked about. But it's still important for us to go through them so that we remind ourselves of the importance of some of these things. So for this presentation, I'll just be going through the regulatory considerations, the required documentations. We're going to be looking at the safety and the risk management, and then what as the regulatory authorities, what do they have to say concerning compounding? What are the things that we have with respect to compounding? Now, we already emphasized compounded products. They don't go through the rudiments that commercially available products go through. It's been emphasized, and we've established that fact. But even though they don't go through it, it's important for you to know that as a compounding pharmacist, the quality, safety, and efficacy of your presentation of your compounded product rests on you. Whatever issue that you have with respect to the product that is coming out of your pharmacy, you as the compounding pharmacist will be accountable for it. So it's important for you to know that the responsibility that is placed by the regulatory authorities rests solely on you as the compounding pharmacist. Thank you. So what are those regulatory considerations? In terms of the prescription requirement, we already mentioned that you don't go into compounding if you have that particular formulation commercially available. We have not reached that stage yet where they have in Australia, where they have in Canada, and all these developed countries where compounding is well entrenched and well stabilized. You heard from my team lead that even in Australia, before you compound anything, if it is not available within Australia, you have to find out if that product is available in the United States. You must bring it in, rather than you going forward to compound that formulation yourself. So it's important in terms of prescription requirement to know that it's only when you have a valid requirement or request, from the prescribers, the physicians, the veterinary doctors, sometimes the physiotherapists or whoever has been authorized to prescribe, and what you have on your shelf is unable to meet that requirement or that request, then you can now start thinking of compounding. Sometimes also, and I'm going to share this experience quickly, there might be a situation where in the process of you counseling your patient, there might be a need for you to compound. I still practice pharmacy, in a community pharmacy in Ibadan here, and there was a time I had a patient that had been battling with this skin infection, came to the pharmacy and wanted to buy a topical antibiotic. She approached me and said, look, I've been using all manners of things for almost 3 months, and this thing doesn't seem to go, and she's tired and all of that. And the next question was, who is the person that has been attending to you? Is the person a dermatologist? I said, yes. I said, okay, can I just put a call through? Let's speak. We spoke with the person, we chatted together, and the question I had is, have you even done any laboratory? And he said, no. The dermatologist said he's very familiar with this kind of skin condition, so there was no need to do that. But all the things you have been prescribing for this young lady, none of them has worked. So what do we do? I said, okay, let's see if we are going to send her. We sent her to the lab, and the thing that came was metronidazole. Had 3 pluses. Okay, metronidazole to be swallowed orally is not going to be quickly effective. So what do we do? I thought of, why can't we compound metronidazole for her and let's see what is going to happen. This happened about 3 weeks ago. So I told her, can you come back in the evening in 2 hours? I went to the books. What do I need to get this thing sorted out? We were able to prepare metronidazole ointment for her. I just used metronidazole tablets, did the right formulation, then I used Vaseline that does not have any perfume. That plain Vaseline as the base. And that was what I did. It was as if, it was a jackpot. Within 3 days, we saw 25% reduction in that skin infection. The dermatologist was excited. You know, we became friends. I just got a new dermatologist friend 3 weeks ago. You know, and he said, look, we need to start talking about how can, he's interested in how can we make this to get to NAFDAC and all that. That takes a process. But you see, the joy that you have when your patients come back to you to tell you that, look, when I used what you compounded for me, it was like magic. That's just an example of the numerous ones I have. Then also we must know that all the raw materials we are getting, they must be from approved suppliers. I have 2 of our colleagues in Ibadan here that they have captopril powders. They imported the captopril powder from USB, of course, in small quantities as approved for them to import. They do a lot of captopril compounding for the teaching hospital in Ife. So that's how I got to know them. So for them, that's what they use. For some of us, we use the tablets. You know, it is also acceptable once you're able to demonstrate the stability and all the other profiles. And I said, any finished product that you are going to use, because sometimes, like the example I just gave, I had to use a finished, commercially available metronidazole tablet, the 200 milligram strength actually, but registered by NAFDAC. You know, that is very, very important. So any finished pharmaceutical product that will act as an excipient must be registered by NAFDAC. Now, in terms of facility and equipment, anywhere you're going to be doing your compounding, it must be a dedicated place, it must be done in a clean environment, and it must be in a segregated place. You cannot say it's dedicated if it is just within the vicinity of your dispensing room. You can't have a compounding area next to where you cancel your patients. So there must be cleanliness, dedication, and segregation. Those 3 workspaces functions or features must go hand in hand so that you minimize cross-contamination and you reduce the error to the barest minimum. Now, we already talked about number 5, that you shouldn't, you know, compound a product that is commercially available. So I just skip that commercial availability. Now, there are certain required documentation that is expected of you when you are going into compounding. My team lead has talked extensively about them, but you see, the truth is this: whatever it is that you compound, make sure you have a record. If it is not written down, that means it was never done. And you see, you need to hold the potency of that particular formulation, that particular compounding exercise, and you need to get it documented. Now, 3 basic records are important: the master formulation record, your compounding record, and your certificate of analysis. And these are just what is expected. For your master formulation record, every single thing you are going to do must be written there. The assigned name, the strength, the dosage form that you have done, all the steps of the calculations, the standard operating procedures that you are going to follow. It's actually a lot of documentation. Okay, it's actually a lot of documentation. When I told the lady to come back in 2 hours, it's because I had to get this one sorted out. While I was reading, I knew, okay, these are the documents, these are the things I need to record down as the process for this. If that particular thing fails and she comes back, I'll be able to retrace my step that, okay, where did I get it wrong? Okay, and that's why I said it's important. The quality, the safety, and the efficacy. Safety is very important so that you don't cause any damage to your patient. Then you have a compounding record and, of course, the certificate of analysis. There's something that we call, I'm trying to remember the word now, design space when you are doing compounding. And what design space means, my team lead was talking about a particular country, I think it was Sudan or something, going beyond what the USP specifies. Where I practice my compounding, I don't do anything more than 10 days. That is me. If you cannot take anything beyond 10 days, because people will put you under pressure. I just 10 days, I have to come back in 10 days. Yes, you have to come back in 10 days to get another thing prepared for you. And this is going to bring me to a wonderful story I'm always proud of telling. You know, at about age 3, a baby was discovered she had a hole in the heart and needed to be placed on digoxin and spironolactone. From one of the consultants in UC, permit me, I won't mention his name, but he approached me that, look, I need to get digoxin for this baby, 2.6 milligram every 6 hours. Where are you going to get that? You know, where are you going to get 2.6? I mean 0.26 milligrams, something ridiculous, every 6 hours. And then the spironolactone was 1 milligram every 8 hours. That was the calculation he did based on the weight of that child. The child had a hole in the heart. You know, so the parents are based in Ife, but the father's brother works in Ibadan. So the brother of the father of that child took it upon himself, look, whatever it is, I am going to go to Ife every weekend to give them that medication. You just find a way of preparing it for us. Those were his terms. I can remember very well. And that was about almost 10 years ago. So we started every week. We make, you know, a 7-day preparation of digoxin and spironolactone compounded. They were taking it there every week. After 9 months of that same thing, the consultant called me and said, whatever it is you are doing, please continue. The hole is closing up. The young lady celebrated her 10th birthday, you know, like 2 weeks ago. I was in Ife to cut the cake with her. So these are some of the testimonies that we have. You know, what you are doing as a pharmacist, as a compounding person, it makes a lot of sense. And of course, the label, the final dispense container must clear. It must clearly state the name of the patient, the name of the drug, the strength, the detailed directions for you, the route of administration, the address of the pharmacy, and of course, you must not forget to put the beyond use date. The date at which beyond that is not expected to be administered to the patient. And in terms of safety and risk management, this can never be overemphasized. Safety protocols can never be overemphasized. In fact, before you are able to arrive at the solvent that you're going to use for whatever product, you must have done your stability test. That's very important. You must have done your stability test. The solvent that I use in making that digoxin, when I did the stability test, I knew that by day 19, that product will start degrading in that solvent. I didn't want to say I'm going to do 14 days. That's why I pegged it at 7 days. You know, it was tough on them, but the result, the end of the tunnel is what matters. And the primary goal of excessive safety and risk assessment is to minimize the likelihood of you causing any harm to your patient. And you don't want any situation whereby you are trying to help the patient and you are incorporating some other unwanted situations. So both the personnel and the organizational assets, you know, must comply with regulatory standards. Now we've talked about physical chemical stability, so I'm not going to say much about that anymore. Now, what are the role of the regulators? I wish any of our PCN guys were around here today. Do we have any PCN person around? Okay? I personally invited 3 of them to come. Because as at today, there are no regulatory guidelines for compounding pharmacists in Nigeria. And this thing is a big deal. You know, the summit that we had in Alliance for Compounding Pharmacists in Africa that held in Lagos October 9, 2025 You know that it's a big deal in terms of guidelines. So we need our regulatory people, to come on board. This is a skill that no other health professional, can boast about. Anybody will say 2 tablets 3 times in a day, but the skill of compounding is important. It should be entrenched within us. So the mandate of the Pharmacy Council of Nigeria is to ensure that all compounded medicines meet safety and efficacy standards when commercial formulations are not available for specific patient needs. And I said the other time that it is your responsibility as a compounding pharmacist to ensure that the quality, the safety, and the efficacy of your products, is owned by you. If anything should happen to you, they won't say, "Shebi, now let's leave him up." No, it is going to be the mandatory that are prepared, because it's your name that is going to be attached to your label. So thank you so much. I'm going to invite my wonderful friend, Mr. Babatunde Oshinga, the head of Pharmacy Laboratory, Department of Pharmaceutics and Pharmtech, to lead us in weights and measurements.
Good morning, sirs and ma'ams, fellow professionals. Though I'm not a pharmacist, but I know that I'm speaking with professionals this morning. I want to say good morning, sirs and ma'ams. My name is Babatunde Oshinga, and I want to preach the gospel that we all know. It's not the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ or that of Muhammad. It's the gospel of weighing and measuring. I know we are familiar with weighing and measuring, but we only want to lay emphasis on one or two things. Like it's been said, I want to thank my HOD for bringing me along here, person of Dr. Ajani. In any formulation, research, compounding, any drug, weighing and measuring is very, very key. I will say that is the foundation of whatever formulation or compounding that we are going to make. Either in our individual pharmacies or in our labs or elsewhere, we must weigh and as well measure. Let me take us back home. If you want to cook beans, you will use agolo to weigh it. We call it agolomic. That's weighing. We might not be able to count the numbers of the beans inside, but we will know that agolomeji ni kò mọ ọmọ tó bá wọn agolo mẹ́ta wọn fún ní kù, because it's agolomeji, and we know that agolomeji will take care of certain numbers of members of the family, so we keep at that. If you want to pour moi that will be sufficient for 50 people, you know the measurement already. So the same thing is applicable to what we do, especially in pharmacy. I want to say that with due respect to all of us seated here, I have had over time that doctors, as important as they are, they can only kill an individual at a time. But pharmacists can kill millions at a time if our compounding is not well packaged. So we are more important than the doctors. Let's give ourselves a round of applause, please. That is it. Because that which you take, you give to all of us, we must take it, either we believe it or not. If you fail to take it, even if you have the drug in your pocket, your mind will be there. They have not taken this drug. So that is why this headache has not disappeared. So we will be talking about weighing and measurement. Weighing and measuring here. Accurate weighing and measuring are fundamental laboratory operations that ensure accuracy, precision, reliability, reproducibility of experimental results. Either in research or in our pharmacy outlets, weighing and measuring is very, very key. Now, and that is the gospel I will be preaching today, because I know that we all know about it. We only want to lay emphasis. Now, in pharmaceutical research and drug formulation, accurate measurement determines drug efficiency, drug efficacy, drug safety, product quality, and regulatory compliance. I want to talk about this regulatory because I know that in our codes too, there are standards there. When you measure this, you add this to this. If you do otherwise, you are killing somebody. Even if it is rats that we are using to experiment, once you do it contrary to regulatory compliance, what the standard said, mix this. If you do otherwise, you are going to kill that rat. So we want to talk of human being. So we need to take cognizance of accurate weighing and measurement. And when we were in secondary, they will say, check many scores. Check many scores. And most of us, we don't understand what this is. If it goes beyond it, you are doing something contrary. I'm very sure we still remember many scores, many scores. They will say, yeah, put it down, check, bend down. Is it? And it is as if we are doing something magic, but it's to ensure accuracy. Now, concepts and definition of weighing. Weighing is the process of determining the mass of a substance using a balance. A balance must be used. And measuring determination of volume, temperature, pH, time, and concentration. Both are essential for precision and reproducibility. The importance of this weighing is to ensure accurate preparation of our formulation. Very, very important. We can't do without it. The standardization of experiments, quality control procedures, then quantitative analysis. These are very fundamental. When it comes to formulation or compounding any product. Now when it comes to weighing, measuring is the determination of quantity, the volume, the quantities of what I want to package, the volume, length, the temperature. If it's going to be 37 degrees Celsius, if you put 38, is contrary. Or concentration of the substance using calibrated instruments. I want to emphasize on this calibration. Calibrated, whatever we are using must be calibrated. If it's cylinder, must be calibrated, irrespective of design. Even if it's volumetric flask that we're using to compound, we must make sure it is calibrated. If it's not calibrated, then whatever we are compounding, it is not. Then common laboratory measurements, there are volumes, mass, temperature, pH, and concentration. Now these are common weight equipment, weighing equipment. I put electronic balance there, and we have our top loading balance. Now type of balance is analytical balance. This analytical balance, like we have there, I hope we all know that before we use a balance, that balance itself must be balanced. If the balance is not balanced, then you are not getting it right. So you must balance your balance before you can get correct results. It's very important. Now when we talk about drug formulation, compounding, I want to say that we must use electronic balance. That will give us the precise and accurate measurement. So before, when you pick your balance you want to use, check, is this balance balanced? If it's not balanced, then balance it. And how do we balance? Then we can talk about that. If I begin to do that, it's going to be a practical thing. How we balance balance our balance. This balance, that analytical balance, that's what we call spirit level. And that spirit level must be balanced. You must adjust it to be at the center of the circle. If it's not at the center of the circle, you are doing two things to the balance. One, you are killing that balance. You will destroy that balance with time. Then secondly, whatever you put on that balance to weigh, it is not correct. If the balance is not balanced. So we have precision balance, top loading balance. We can just use that for practicals in the lab. But if you want to do serious work and want to compound, I recommend analytical balance. Now the characteristics of these weighing balances are high sensitivity, accuracy up to 0.0001. Then reliability of our result, digital display, calibration. This is very important when we are using balance or any type of our balances. We must calibrate your balance every day. And that is why they will say that a balance must be placed on a very good table where there is no vibration. There must not be vibration. There must not be anybody push it. Even little AC can affect the sensitivity of your balance if it's not well placed. Even fan can affect any movement, and that is why when Dr. Ajutu was talking about, you must have a secluded place where you will package your compounding. That is where your balance must be. It must be free of ups and downs. Then it must be able to reproduce itself. Once I place any sample on the balance, once I'm placing it over and over, it must give me the same result. If it's giving me contrary result, then I need to calibrate that balance. That means that balance has problem. Then we must maintain our balance. It's very important. Then efficient use of resources. Now we come to measuring equipment. We all know all this that we display there. We have the beakers, the conical flask, we have the cylinders, we have this volumetric flask. And I tell us, any standard solution we are preparing, if you don't use volumetric flask, it is not correct. And that volumetric flask must be well calibrated. Cylinder, the same thing, must be well calibrated. Even if it is going to be 10 mils, it must be calibrated. Now we have measuring instruments, we have graduated cylinders, pipettes. I know people will do this. You want to measure 0.2 or 0.5 when you are using cylinder. It is totally zero. Whereas you want to do something less than 1, you should use pipette. Well calibrated pipette too, because we have original pipette nowadays. Then we have our thermometer, we have our pH meter, we have our breath when we want to do our analysis. Now, weighing and measuring will help us to achieve accuracy and precision when it comes to compounding or when we want to do research. And we've defined accuracy to be closeness of a measurement to the true value, because we have recommended value. Everybody knows pi is 22/7 anywhere in the world. So the same thing is applicable to accuracy of whatever we want to do. I know in pharmacy we have regulation, we have books, we have documentations, we have codes, we have all series of books that we can refer to. So anything that we want to do, we want to weigh, we want to measure, must be close to the true value. If it's not close to the true value, it's not correct. Then precision, degree of agreement among repeated measurement. We say carry out your work maybe twice, 3 times, find the average value so that we'll be able to know if you are close to the true value. So this measurement and weight is going to go a long way to help us. Importance, it It ensures variable, reliable results, reduces experimental error, and enhances reproducibility. Now, role in scientific research, accurate weighing and measuring, very important. Improve experimental reliability, facilitate data comparison, support reproducibility of findings, because you are not going to be the one that will be doing this for the first time, except the one that has been mentioned by Dr. Ajani and Dr. Adetuji. Maybe you want to do it because it's not available and you have taken necessary measures. So, if it is that, then you must do something very, very close to that which you are compounding. Enhanced validity of conclusion is very important. Because we are talking about human being here, we are not talking about that. Even this animal you are giving, you must have taken at least signed document to say, I am working with this animal, and the safety of this animal is in my hand. There is a committee that sees to making use of animal for our research, for our work. So it's not only that this man we are talking about here, we are talking about animal too. Then pharmaceutical research, food analysis, environmental studies, biochemical investigation. Weighing and measuring, they are fundamental when it comes to research and drug formulation. And I say not only that, when it comes to heating, when it comes to whatever we are doing, we weigh, we measure. If you buy petrol now, you always look at the gauge. You always look at the gauge to see if I am going beyond my pocket. So that happens. Now, roles in drug formulation, very, very important to our discussion. Now, accurate dosage determination is very important, especially when it comes to poison. I know we are familiar with all these things that we put in our mouth. Even that is why we are very, very careful in approaching them, because they don't consider dosage in their thinking. We just anything we take. And someone will come to hospital and say, I'm having back pain, having kidney problem, having liver problem, because he has taken more than his body could carry. So we need to consider this. It helps us to determine the dosage we are going to determine, like has been said by Dr. Adetuji, in the course of finding solution to the young lady who has holes in her heart. Then product uniformity. If I do it and you're doing it elsewhere, it must be the same. And it is because we have considered the weighing and the measuring of the standards. Not that I want to do it my own way. You are not giving it to just anybody. You are administering it to human being. So you must make sure uniformity is achieved. The safety and efficacy, this is very important for people to take, so that we not go and take something else. Then regulatory compliance, we have talked about that. Drug formulation involves combining active pharmaceutical ingredients with excipients in precise quantities. And when we talk about precise quantity, it has to do with weighing and measurement. It is nothing else. We must weigh and measure. It gives us accurate weighing, ensures correct drug dosage, uniformity of product, therapeutic effectiveness, then patient safety. The patient will be safe. Now, factor affecting accuracy, human factor. We do whatever you like. Where you are compounding, maybe you hit there. You are causing, you are polluting that place. That is human factor. Maybe it is you are not well dressed. In a lab, if you want to work in a lab, you must wear a coat. You must be well dressed. Human factor. Not that I want to do it, or it is where you are doing for our lady seated. Do respect to us. Maybe it is where you want. Remember, you want to lose your hair. I bet there's a need where you are compounding. No, we must be very careful about experimental factor, instrumental factor. If you discover that balance, the last 2 digits begins to mess up, it's fluctuating, then discover that balance has to be. Don't begin to say, I will manage it. We're talking about drug formulation here, and whatever we have to do must be done properly, So once you discover that the last 2 digits of your balance is fluctuating, then we need to calibrate it. Then poor calibration is not going to help to achieve accuracy. Equipment malfunction, contamination, improper sampling, and then good laboratory practice, regular calibration, follow SOPs, use appropriate equipment for use it well. Don't use beaker instead of measuring cylinder. It's not the same. It's not the same. Don't use beaker instead of measuring cylinder. Calibrated one for that matter. Don't use it. Then avoid contamination. Record data immediately. Don't put it in your head. I will not forget. Don't worry, I won't forget. You pack everything in your head. You have tendency to forget, especially when it comes to 0.00 something. Then you begin to have issue. The proper maintenance of the equipment is very important. Use of appropriate instruments, we have said that. Documentation of measurements, very key. Record and training of personnel. It's like we are doing here now. We are training and exposing ourselves. Like myself, I have gathered something this morning. The adherence to SOP. And quality assurance and quality control is very important. Accurate measurement will support quality assurance and quality control. And we must be consistent. Consequences of inaccurate measurement, then whatever we are doing, invalid result and poor reproducibility is going to be, then the drug is not going to be patent, then there will be need for us to recall, then we'll have a lot of problem with our patients. Like we have had over time, they will say, NAFDAC said they should recall standard batches of the products. Then in conclusion, every successful experiment and every effective medicine begins with accurate weighing and measuring. Then weighing and measuring are indispensable laboratory activities that form the foundation of scientific research and drug formulation. We have this reference. I want to say thank you for the attention. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Please put on your lab coats and let's quickly do our demonstration. I know time is far gone, but it won't be good for us not to do this aspect since it's part of what we planned. The case study that we have is an urgent request from the neonate intensive care unit. And the request is that we prepare spironolactone 2.5 milligram per ml for a 14-day-old premature infant. And the hospital stocks, or if it's a community pharmacy that is in collaboration with a hospital that is close by, they stock only 25 milligrams of the commercial tablets. So, using our therapeutic cascade decision making, we have verified that there is no licensed pediatric liquid formulation of this spironolactone 2.5 milligram per ml. We've checked our formularies, we've checked the NIH guideline, and we've confirmed that there is clinical justification for this particular extemporaneous preparation. And so now we are proceeding. My colleagues are right beside me here. I hope you can all see the table here. Next thing we are doing right now is the vehicle selection for neonatal safety. Now remember that benzoyl alcohol or benzoic acid or even propylene glycol cannot be used in neonates because they have immature metabolic pathways. And so it is important that we are using a vehicle that is safe, preservative-free aqueous vehicle. That is what we are going to use. And so this morning, we are going to be preparing our spironolactone from the 25 milligram tablet to achieve the 2.5 milligram per ml. And you can see that we have all kitted up. My colleagues are sanitizing their hands. I hope you can see that. And then the next thing that's going to happen is that they will weigh out the tablet, having calculated So I'm going to hand over the mic to my colleague who's going to say what else they're carrying out.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now the first decision we need to take is to determine what is the volume that we are going to prepare. For this demonstration, we are preparing just 50 meals. And you recall that the request is for us to have a 2.5 milligram per meal preparation. So if you are preparing 50 meals, let's just do some calculation. If you are preparing 50 meals and you want the strength or concentration to be 2.5 milligram per meal, what is going to be the concentration of the API, the spironolactone that will be inside the 50 mils? Anybody? Is anybody going to help me out with that? Yeah. What's the value? No, if you are going to have 2.5 milligram in one meal, so just multiply 50 by 2.5. What are you going to get? 150 milligram. 150 milligram for that excess. And that's why we are adding that 0.5 that is there to give room for, for any excess we're going to have. Now, from our own solvent stability studies, we know that it's a combination of glycerin with pharmaceutical syrup. And then a little coloring, we're going to use vitamin B complex as the coloring, so that the child will have, the child that is taking it will have an aesthetic feeling that he or she is taking something colored. Most children don't like to take something that is not colored. Sometimes if you have anything that is cherry flavored, you can add it, depending on if you have been able to establish the stability protocols for that particular preparation. For this one, we have been able to establish it. And we're going to just add the freshly prepared pharmaceutical syrup and oral glycerin. Thank you. So I think the crushing, are we done with the crushing? Okay, we are done with the crushing. So the next thing we're going to do is to weigh. From there, we're going to find what we have here is an API that contains 5.5 milligram of spironolactone. So what we're going to do now, let's just have an idea of the weight, the total weight that we have. So it's transferring from the mortar. It's going to transfer it to the weighing boat now for us to have an idea of the quantity we have. You can see that you have some fragments of powder still stuck, to the mortar, and that's why it's important for you to use that 10% calculation to determine that. It shouldn't be more than 10%, so that you don't overflow whatever it is you're having. So now we've been able to establish the weight. What we have here is 82 milligram. Remember, this is API and excipient. The 82 milligram is expected to contain the exact amount of the API that we need for the 50 ml formulation. So the next thing we're going to do, because it has been calculated, so I'm not going to waste our time, we are going to, that's good. So the next thing we're going to do now, thank you, is we are going to pour 4 40 mils of pharmaceutical syrup goes into the amber bottle. Make sure it's 40 mils. Yeah, we're using this one. Yeah, I don't go down one to and why amber bottle? Why amber bottle? Huh? Yes, because of light sensitivity. Spironolactone is very sensitive to light. If you expose it to light, it begins to degrade, and you don't want that at all. And that's why we are packaging it in amber bottle. In fact, there are some people, I say, no, they just package everything in amber bottle. The one that is not sensitive to light, most medications are not all of them are sensitive to darkness anyway. So most of the time, you have amber bottles readily available in your pharmacy, and you can buy amber bottles, as much as you want. Yeah. No, we can use. So we're going to make some things with the syrup. Now, let me just talk quickly about the role of the pharmaceutical syrup. Yeah, we're wrapping up. The pharmaceutical syrup is going to have flavor. The glycerin is going to ensure that before each dose is taken, that particular formulation is going to be suspended sufficiently enough for the dose to be taken, so that once the caregiver, this was a patient, a child, once the caregiver shakes the bottle and then dispenses the quantity from it, is going to have an accurate measure. Yeah. So, yeah, we are dissolving. No, we've already doing this. Everything is going inside. The whole thing is going inside. It's going to form a suspension. And that's what we're doing. It's going to form a suspension. So what you have here is the already crushed caprolactone tablet inside, dissolved in 40 mils of pharmaceutical syrup, freshly prepared pharmaceutical syrup. This syrup was prepared very early this morning. Freshly prepared. You can prepare it, and if you are sure you have a refrigerator that doesn't go on and off, you can prepare and put there. But your preparation, as we advise, should not be more than 3 days old before you use it. If it is not okay for you, once it's 3 days old, just discard it, or you drink garri with it or something, so that you don't waste your resources. Just 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes of glycerin. Just 5 minutes of glycerin. 5 minutes of glycerin. So you see that it's using a 10 mil cylinder to measure 5 mils of the glycerin that we are using. It's using a 10 mil cylinder to do that measurement, and that's what it's doing. You can't use a 100 mil cylinder to measure 5 mils. Your level of inaccuracy is going to increase, and you don't want that. You are going to have a reduced level of accuracy. Yeah, thank you. And then the B complex, to give you some color, is going to be 5 mils also, and that's what we arrive at 50 mils. Let's open it up. there will be time for questions. At least we have about 10 minutes of questions. You see how beautiful it's looking now? It's very tasty, it's looking beautiful, it's suspendable, it's a suspension, and it's going to be labeled as such. So that one will go into the amber bottle. And you can swab it a little on the base. So that's and that's it. So we have a liquid formulation of spironolactone, 50 mils, that is 2.5 milligram per mil, and that's what we just demonstrated. So what we have. So what we have now is to label. So they are going to write the label, alright? And I'm going to advise, you can have miniature size, depending on the bottle you have. You can have miniature size labels, like you can just peel the back and then you stick it onto the bottle. Or you can just use your thumb, as the case may be. You know, if you have labels that you can just remove, you know, the transparency at the back and then you stick it on the bottle. Work better. But we are going to handwrite this, okay? And what we're going to have, I'm going to request, once we're done, the camera will zoom in so that we see what you are writing there.
There comes a time when we heed a certain call, when the world must come together as one. There are people dying.
So we're going to have shake the bottle before use and then store in the cookies. So the main label is ready. We are writing the auxiliary labels now. The auxiliary labels are as important as the main label. For this product, you're going to have two auxiliary labels. Shake the bottle before you use and then store in a cool, dry place. And then we're done. Every other information that we're going to give, we're going to be passing to the caregiver with respect to the number of times it's going to be used and all of that, just for the sake of time.
Somewhere will soon make a change. We are all part of God's great big family. And the truth, you know, love is all we need. We are the world. We are the children. We are the ones who make a brighter day. So let's start giving. Just you and me.
So just as we have said, the beyond use date is very important. And I talked about design space. Your own design space should be more stringent than what the regulatory books, what the official books say. For spironolactone, using this solvent, what the official books say is that if you use this solvent to prepare spironolactone, it can go as much as 20 days. But just as I said, our own design space is going to squeeze that into 10 days. So what is going to be on our own label is a beyond use date of June 26, which is 10 days from now. And that's what we have. Shake well before use, This is a companion product spanning at 2.5 mg per ml suspension beyond use date June 26, 2026. Faculty of Pharmacy, University of Ibadan, that's the address of the pharmacy, and then you make sure you store in a good place, and then we are done. Thank you very much, my team lead.
Thank you. The last model is where we are now, and that's model 6. We're looking at the best practices for extemporaneous preparations. This is more or less like a summary of all that we have done today. The first point is that it is important that we adhere strictly to the therapeutic cascade. That was what we started with at the beginning. We've also talked about the importance to avoid dose slippage by using manual splitting of tablets, and that's what we have tried to exemplify about what we did just now in our hands-on demonstration. So rather than ask them to split tablets, we have extemporaneously prepared spironolactone 2.5 mg per ml. That's what we've been able to do. And then we have also, from what we've done, been able to ensure that we've selected the right vehicle even for our preparation. You will notice that we avoided filtration, and the reason for that is some active ingredient could actually be absorbed in some of the excipients, and so at the end of the day, you actually have a reduction in the dose that you are to deliver. So we avoid filtration as much as possible and ensure that what we end up with is a suspension. And then of course, it's important to acknowledge pediatric toxicity, and that was why we avoided using any vehicle that had any of those excipients we had mentioned, methyl alcohol as well as propylene glycol, because of the immature metabolic clearance system of the neonates. Okay, and then of course packaging, very, very important. Just like we demonstrated, it is important that you state on the label that this is a compounded preparation. It also has on the label the BUD, and you saw that instead of using the 14 maximum day that we had shown earlier, we stopped with 10 days so that we are sure that the potency of the preparation, is intact within the stated period. We added shake well before use. One extra auxiliary label that we did not add was keep refrigerated. It is also important that that is added for this particular preparation. So, we've said so much all day. How does this benefit us? Because we have talked a lot about things to avoid, things to be careful about, and it almost seems like, should we really go into this compounding? So what really is the benefit for the community pharmacist? The benefit is, first of all, that of revenue and professional growth. Because you're working with an extemporaneous preparation, you actually can add your professional fee even to these products. My colleague made mention of examples where clients came themselves, and in the process of counseling, he was able to realize that there's a need for an extemporaneous preparation to take care of the dermatological condition. Of course, the satisfaction that he had in that patient coming back and showing him that the skin condition had cleared is something that you cannot even describe. The joy is something else. And then of course, you authenticate the fact that you are the medication expert, and so you are able to work with the dosing. You're able to avoid allergen and tailor the preparation to the specific need of the patient. And of course, extemporaneous preparations are actually the future of pharmacy. now that we are going into personalized medicines as a result of pharmacogenetics, we are realizing now that the genetic composition of individuals are different, and it will also affect how we medicate our patients. And so as a result of that, extemporaneous preparations will be our next go-to, coupled with the fact that we also have different comorbidities, and the fact that children are now coming down with what we used to term as adult diseases. So these are the reasons why the community pharmacies cannot afford to sit back and watch, but rather to step in and bridge the gap in all these situations. At this point, I want to say a very big thank you to the Association of Community Pharmacists in Nigeria, Oyo State Branch. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to come and share out of our knowledge with you. I want to say thank you to the Pharmacists Council of Nigeria also, my department that has given me the platform to stand before you, my collaborators. You can see that I couldn't do all the talk by myself. It was important to bring someone who had the experience of what happens actually within the community, and he gave you that. I also want to say thank you to pharmacist Biono Ajibade and Tamid Arobudade. Of course, they were the ones who spoke to me about this. I'm also thanking the Global Alliance for Pharmacy Compounding in Africa. They came in October and they were able to bring their wealth of experience, even into Nigeria. They came in from the USA. I'm also thanking my mentor who gave me the privilege, to go into that. And I just want to say thank you to all these people. Now, all the various studies that I was mentioning in Australia, in Ireland, in Sudan, these are the references from where I got them from. Thank you for listening. And
before I go ahead and present this token of appreciation to the team, I think we can give them another round of applause. It's a wonderful session we had, and this actually differentiated us when we look at it as part of our practice. Well, this award is coming to the team, Award of Excellence from Masterclass of Nigeria, Oyo State Branch, and in recognition of your outstanding contributions to the growth of extemporaneous compounding and pharmaceutical education. Incidentally, they are our teachers, they are producers. They produced us. So this morning, on behalf of ACPN, we want to present this to you as a token of appreciation to your team for being here. For being here with us this morning to show us these wonderful steps again, to remind us and for us to know that this is actually the differentiating platform that pharmacists, the community can actually work with. Thank you very much.
Everybody's born a winner, yeah. If only you just believe, yeah.